If you're struggling with reading comprehension on the LSAT, you are not alone. So many people do. It is by design. It is literally written that way to purposefully be confusing. They take normally written articles and then they rewrite them to make the sentences hard to follow, to read in an unnatural way, and to just be more complex than necessary. So if you're struggling, it's not you, it is a test, but it does not have to be that difficult. I'm going to share with you exactly what I did to increase my reading comprehension score from 8 to 10 wrong per section to only an average of 2 wrong per section. And you will not score the score you really need on the LSAT unless you can get your reading comprehension score down. Before we start, I'm going to ask you, please do me a favor and like this video, subscribe. It lets me know that you want to see more content like this on my channel. It helps push this video out to more people who can benefit from the information. And it helps my channel out a lot because I'm trying to get monetized before the end of the summer, before school starts. I don't know where I'm going yet. I haven't gotten any acceptances yet, but we're just going to go ahead and manifest and speak that into existence. Now, I'm going to put my actual notes on the screen here for you to follow along, but I am going to have to look at my notes so that I can read them to you. Okay, let's get into it. First thing to know is this is an untimed practice that you're going to do. It's an untimed exercise, if you will. I made it a point to try to do like this, what I'm about to tell you, with one reading comp section per day, untimed. And eventually, like, you have to slow down to speed up. When you slow down and focus on accuracy, naturally you're going to speed up. But the goal here is to help you get better at decoding, if you will, these long, complex, very hard to follow sentences. So what you're going to do, I'm going to tell you what you're going to do, and then I'm going to show you how you do it. What you're going to do is you're going to translate the passage, word for word, bar for bar. No, you're going to translate the passage into bullet point notes in your own words, in simple terms. And I'm going to show you exactly what I mean. But stopping to do this is going to force you to slow down and force you to realize if you're understanding what's going on before you continue reading. Because if you can't put something into your own words, then you don't know what's going on. So it's going to help you with that a lot. Another big thing here is do not ever, not during this exercise or while taking the test, do not read the next sentence until you understand the sentence that you just read. I promise you, reading ahead is not going to help clarify or put anything into context to help you understand it better. It's just not. If you have to reread the sentence a few times, do what you got to do. Do not move on until you understand for sure what just happened in the sentence you just read. Something that you can keep in mind when you're reading is all reading comprehension questions are a form of a must be true question. All of the answers are in the passage. Might feel like a needle in a haystack to find it sometimes, but all of the answers are in the passage. There are several like recurring themes that you can almost count on to be in every single set of questions for every single passage. And that's going to be, what is the main point of the passage? What are the author's feelings? They may ask that in a variety of different ways, but it's important to make a mental note of what is the author's tone? And we'll show an example of that as well. And then there's going to be most strongly supported or most strongly suggests. Again, it's a must be true. The answer is in the passage. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so read along with me. In a series of presidential proclamations between 1902 and 1909, the United States government set aside some 17 million acres of southeastern coastal Alaska to comprise the Tongass National Forest. Another thing, I'm going to stop right there really quick, I want to mention is if you don't know how to pronounce something, it's okay. Don't even try, because you're not saying any of this out loud. Pronounce it however you want in your head. Give it a nickname, like this is the Tongass National Forest. Just call it T. call it big T, call it whatever makes sense in your head, and keep it pushing. That's going to help you with your time a lot. That long old nasty long sentence that is a wannabe paragraph. This is how this is an example of how I simplified it in my own words. So, U.S. government set aside about 17 million acres in Alaska in 1902 to 1909 to create the Tongass National Forest. Now, at this point, I don't know if the time frame is going to be relevant. I don't know if the amount of acres is going to be relevant. We don't know any of that yet. So I'm just going to go ahead and make a note of it. The more you do this, the more you will start to be able to pick out what information is key. And eventually you won't need to take notes at all. I forgot to say that part. You know, my ADHD brain is all over the place, but this exercise, when you do this, you're going to do this for the whole passage. And then eventually you're going to get to a point where you're only taking notes on the first half of the passage. And then you're like, I got it from here. And then you're going to get to a point where you're not taking any notes at all. And that's the goal. So when you're starting out, you're going to be writing more details in these bullet point notes. And then eventually you'll be able to write less and less. But while you're still figuring out what information is important, you're going to write all the key details. So I have another little thing right here for you. In that same exact sentence, you'll see the who, what, when, and why. Who, U.S. government. What is the thing? What is the subject of the sentence? 17 million acres of land in Alaska. When was this? 1902 to 1909. And why did they do this? They set it aside because they wanted to create a forest. Like, that's it. We know what's going on, and we're going to keep on moving. So, although much of the territory that was thus declared to be U.S. government property had no previous officially registered ownership. You see what I'm saying? They make this so complicated. They could have just said like it wasn't officially registered to anybody before, but they say it had no previous officially registered ownership. It was, in fact, traditionally held and used by the members of the Native Alaskan, I don't know how to say that, and I don't know how to say that, nations. You see what I'm saying? She's gonna keep pushing. And I made a note so I'm gonna show you how I paraphrase it. All of those word salad simplified just says most of the territory had no previous official ownership, but it was traditionally used by Native Alaskan T and H. Okay? So to now re-summarize the two sentences together, which is the first paragraph, the U.S. government wanted to create this forest. They set aside 17 million acres of land in Alaska. And basically, they knew this land wasn't theirs originally. They knew this land wasn't theirs. It had no official ownership. Yeah, because the natives didn't use United States laws, you know? So, but it was traditionally used, AKA it really morally belonged to the natives. Period. Okay, we're going to keep it pushing. Recognizing the need to address issues concerning T and H land ownership in the Tongass National Forest, the U.S. Congress in 1906 passed the Alaska Native Allotment Act, which was designed to establish legal recognition of individual Native Alaskans' private ownership of the land that had traditionally been used by their people. Again, they just said a whole lot of words to say not a lot. Okay, so now we have Congress passed the Alaska Native Allotment Act in 1906. There goes that date again, to address land ownership issues and establish legal ownership to individual natives, not the tribe as a whole, but to people of the land that their tribe traditionally used. Their people traditionally used is how I wrote it. And if you just want to like make a mental note to connect the dots, because I don't know if it's going to be relevant yet. I haven't read this whole passage yet. We have the time frame in the first paragraph is 1902 to 1909. That's when they were setting aside this land. The act was created in 1906. So it makes you wonder, was there some type of conflict? Stay tuned for more information. But like, these are the types of things you want to be actively reading, not just passively like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because sometimes the stuff you're reading doesn't make sense. And it's okay to call that out. It's okay to think about it. You should be actively engaging in reading. It's going to make it a lot easier to pay attention to what you're reading and to follow along, like create a narrative like, oh, they did that 4 years after they started. Were the natives giving them a hard time? You know, so these are things that if it's a question to you, then it's a sign that maybe that information is going to be shared later in the passage. All right, let's keep going. Modeled on Euro-American private property concepts, the act allowed Native Alaskan heads of household to apply for up to 160 acres of land, subject to certain conditions. Because, back then, women couldn't have shit. So it had to be head of household, right? So they're telling us that it was modeled on the Euro-American private property concepts for a reason. Like, what does that make you think about? It makes you think about the fact that you're trying to create land ownership rights for a people based on a system of ideology, a system that is not their system. That's not how they do things. So will there be a conflict regarding that? Let's see. To me, that's like a little key that makes me be like, okay, everything in here they're telling you for a reason. So you should, actively ask yourself, like, why are they telling me this? Why? What does this information point to? Okay. Then we have, despite its proponents' good intentions, the Alaska Native Allotment Act failed for a number of reasons. There we go. It failed. How I had summarized that is the act was modeled on Euro-American private property concepts. It allowed Native head of households to apply for up to 160 acres of land. And despite good intentions, the act failed. You don't need I highlighted this just to point this out for y'all. Highlight it when you're taking your own notes if you need to. But despite good intentions is going to tell us the author's tone or the author's feelings. Now, we don't know the conclusion of this passage, but I can guarantee there's going to be a question that's asking something along the lines of the author's feelings, like, is it contentment? Is it, do they agree? Like, these are just little things to pay attention to. Always pay attention to what the author's feelings are. Sometimes there's no feelings. That's a passage type that's like a journalism type passage where they're just strictly reporting information. That's worth noting too. But despite good intentions, show some type of bias, show some type of opinion. So I went ahead and highlighted that. I'm going to stop right there. I'm not going to go through the entire passage on this video because I feel like that would be taking forever. But I just wanted to give you a really quick example of how you're going to decode and translate these sentences into simpler terms in your own words. Take your notes how you talk. These notes are not a homework assignment. They are not being read by anybody but you. Write it how you think. I remember there was one time where it was something and I had said something in my notes and I called the people I was talking about the ops because that's just how it makes sense in my head. You're going to take notes how it makes sense in your head. You're going to understand what the sentence is saying. And then you're going to write it down how it made sense in your head. And that's going to help you follow along. You're going to be allowing yourself to ask questions to yourself of things like, why would they do that? Why does that information matter? That doesn't sound like a good idea. Allow yourself to have thoughts about the passage. That's going to also help you follow along. It's going to help you understand what's going on, understand the tone. But okay, now I have a few more things that I want to tell you that you're not going to do. Okay. So do not think that continuing to read is going to help make anything more clear. Do not be like, I'm not really sure what that was about, but I'm going to keep reading, and then hopefully that gives me some context and it helps. It's not ever going to help it make more sense. If anything, the second half of the passage will be so much easier to follow along if you got a really solid foundation on the beginning of the passage. And you're not going to understand any of the details if you don't understand what they're talking about, what the issue is. Also, do not think reading the questions is going to help you understand the passage better. It won't. It won't. But I promise you, if you do this and you get really clear on what the passage is about, when you get to them questions, the answers are going to be so obvious, it's going to be easy. And some of them might be tricky, of course. This is the LSAT we're talking about. But generally speaking, it's going to be so clear. Like there's going to be answer choices that are like so obviously wrong too, because you really understand what's going on. And if you understand what's going on, the answer choices are supposed to be easy. It's only tricky for people who just are paying attention, like, oh yeah, they did mention that word, they did mention those people, so that means that this is probably the right answer. No. Also, don't come for me. This is gonna sound crazy, but I promise you, if I can do it, you can do it. Do not highlight as you read the passage. Do not highlight. Let's think about this really quick. If you're taking a literature class or you're studying something, right? You highlight because you want to be able to go back and find that information. If you understand this passage, I promise you, there is nothing you're going to need to go back and see because it's really not that complex. It's just written to sound like it is. It's not a lot going on. There's short passages. They're just written in a very confusing, hard to follow, unnatural way of reading way. When you're highlighting something, we highlight because we plan to go back and find that information. You're not going to need to go back and find that information. Don't highlight it. And if you think you might need to remember something, write it down. You'll be allowed scratch paper on a test. This is where eventually you're going to get to a point where you don't need to do bullet points of the whole passage, but maybe there's like one little thing that you want to write down. Write it down because that's going to help you remember it more and make you process what you read more than just a passive highlight. So challenge yourself to not highlight anything while you're reading. There is one thing that using the highlighter function is good for. And considering that these are all pretty much must be true questions, I like to, when it gets to doing the questions, I would get things wrong because I would think like, oh, I thought that it said this, or I thought, like, there's nothing to think about. The information is there. Don't think, you need to know. If I thought I knew the answer, I'll look at the passage, verify, prove to myself. I will find where in the passage it proves my answer choice right. And I will highlight that if I need to. And again, you're not going to need to do this on every passage. We're not talking about timing here. We're not worried about finishing a whole section at this point. We're just getting good at understanding what the fuck is going on. Okay. Here are some things to pay attention to that's going to help you study more effectively. Right now, we just talked about just doing one section, like do one section a day. Untimed, we're concerned with accuracy and understanding, not how much we get done, okay? When you get to the point where you're doing a whole section, you're going to pay attention to which questions are you getting wrong. And what I mean by that is, are your wrong answers concentrated to one passage, or are they spread out throughout all the passages in the section? What that tells you is if most of your wrong answers are coming from one passage, maybe two, you didn't understand that passage. If you got all of the questions right on the other passages, but you got most of the questions of this passage wrong, that means you didn't understand that passage. And you need to then go back and review it and figure out what you didn't understand and yada, yada, yada. If your wrong answers are spread out throughout the whole section, that means that you are not understanding or you're misreading the question. It's not that you didn't understand anything in the passage because you understood enough to get most of the answers right. If you're only getting like a few wrong per passage, but you're either not understanding what the question is asking you, or you're moving too fast and you're misreading it. It's usually what it is. But paying attention to which of those scenarios is your case is going to help you study more effectively. It's going to let you know what you need to pay more attention to or what you need to improve on. Is it you're reading too fast? You're misunderstanding the question? Is it, this is how we study more effectively, by understanding what we got wrong, what that means, and why we got it wrong. So yay, we've made it to the end of the video. Hopefully this isn't too long of a video. If this was helpful, first of all, tell me in the comments. I've been wanting to do lives where I go through these reading comprehension passages, go through the actual questions, and share my thought process while I'm reading these. If that's something you would be interested in watching, let me know. But if you would like one-on-one help with the LSAT, I had a tutor. It helped me a lot. I found him on Reddit. He was very affordable because he was a student who was waiting for his admission cycle to end. And I felt personally happy to pay a student instead of a big company, because I knew that that money was helping a student, like a peer of mine, essentially, with their law school journey. That said, I feel like it's really important to pay forward. He gave me very affordable tutoring, and I would like to pay that forward to other people. So if you are interested in some one-on-one help, I have opened up a pay what you want tutoring session. There is a minimum, but the minimum is $40 for an hour, and you can pay minimum of $40 or whatever it's worth to you. And you can get that one-on-one help, because things live on YouTube forever. This will be available until I start school, because once I start school, I got to focus on school. But it is currently March, and we got some months. So if you could use the one-on-one help and you want the one-on-one help, take advantage of this now while I'm literally still available. I have put the link in my description box for you. And yeah, if you have any other question types or issues or things that, you would like help with or explanations of, tell me in the comments. Tell me in the comments this was helpful. And if you have nothing else to say, just comment algorithm just to help your girl out. Anyways, see you next time. Bye.